Alright. Well, that's what it looks like with the other original gears removed. I started cleaning up my gasket mating surface all around the edge. That's interesting the way the timing gear meshes with the cam here. See, there's just this little thin collar that the gear slips onto and the bolt goes into the center of it. And then down on the bottom side, when you're at top dead, number 1, there's a spot for a pin to slide in there. See, here's the old cam gear, and you see its appendage? She's got a pin to keep her lined up. But when you go to the new cam gear, she's got a pinhole. So it would appear that I need to get this pin out of this gear. It's a good thing we were changing on it. See, she's brittle and falling apart. The main reason we had to change it though is because of the 1.5 miles of slack in it. But yeah, I'm sure that pin's going to come out of here nice and easy, no problems. And then we'll go back on with our new timing gear. Well, actually, I was also test fitting the bottom gear and I noticed that she doesn't quite mesh up real nice with the keyway there. So I just got to get on the inside of that keyway slide with a file and make it slightly larger on the sides. And then she'll go back together, be all in time. You can't see that shit. All right. Now we've got a new timing set on. I confused myself for just a second. If you may have noticed, when I put that gear, the cam gear on, it looked to be 180 degrees out of the crank gear. So I paused for a minute and double checked, and it turns out I accidentally took it apart on the exhaust stroke. So when I came up here and popped the distributor cap off, my distributor guy wasn't pointed at number 1, it was pointed 180 the other way. So all I had to do was put the cam gear on what looked like was 180 degrees out the other way, and then when I rotated the whole assembly around another 180 degrees, you see the two timing marks right there lined straight up with each other, and now the distributor rotor guy is pointed at number 1. So I thought something was wrong at first, but I knew that it ran before we took it apart, so obviously we don't need to spin the cam 180 degrees different from where it was. And yeah, figured I better include that in there because I bet that's happened to a couple fellers. At first I thought something was 180 out, something backwards, something or another. No, I just took it apart on the different stroke than I thought I was on. Anyway, now we can go back in with our fuel pump flapper. That's what this guy does. He sits in there oblonged. You see it has a hole that lines up with the end of our pin. And then we have a big washer on here to keep the pin from walking out and falling into the case. But he sits in there all oblong shaped and spins around in a weird pattern, and that pumps the fuel pump guy. Doop, 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 doop. Yep, let's put it back together. Alright, now we've got our timing cover reinstalled and all our bolts torqued down. Slap the fuel pump back onto the timing cover. We even painted our little spacer down there. That looks nicer. And then we move around the corner there to that drippy drip freeze plug. I may have showed you about this earlier. I don't remember. But anyway, our freeze plug up here was just a dripping. It was about the only leak I found underneath the whole car. So to get that out, I got this big, this big punch. See it? Anyway, I took my hammer and a big punch and I focused on one side, unlike the camera, and then and that pushed the freeze plug in on one side and made it where it spin around like so. And then that makes it where you can get in here, grab it by the side and wiggle it out. And there you go. We removed a freeze plug. I was thinking it was leaking around the edge, but it looks like it may have just been leaking from the metal getting worn down right there. Because me popping on it with the punch sure just poked a hole right through it. Anywho, that's out of the way now. Then we get to come back in here and clean this hole up. Ew-wee. What the solid pieces of things? Why are you even? This isn't where you go. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we are going to get some stuff out when we do our coolant flush here real soon. Anyway, now we got to get in here with our wire wheel on the drill and clean up around this edge really good and dry it all out, and then we'll put some RTVs around the new freeze plug, set it in place, and pop it back in. Yeah. Okay. Well, I've got my freeze plug out. We went ahead and mounted on the fuel pumpulator, and I noticed something. I just might possibly have gotten the wrong size freeze plug. So we're going to hold off on that for a minute till I get the correct one tomorrow. Now I'm moving forward on the water pumpulator. And you see they look just about identical, except this one has an appendage for a heater hose out guy, and this one has a threaded hole for an appendage for a heater hose out guy. So what do you fellas think the chances are? What do you think, Muffin? That, hello, oh my, careful. So what do you think the chances are that that is just gonna back out of that spot nice and easy and go into the new unit? 100%? Good, me too. All right. Well, I did get it out, and it didn't break. And this whole pile right here is the gunk that I cleaned out of it. And I think while I'm at work tomorrow, I'm going to try to find a replacement for that too. It does seem to have a fair bit of metals left in it, but it's really less than ideal. It's already missing a big chunk of itself, and it just seems like that's going to be a leak down the road. So I'm going to try to find another one of those before we resort to having to put that in the new water pump. Anyway, I guess I'll go ahead and move on forward with mounting the new water pump. And then when I figure out my heater hose fitting situation, we can just thread it on in with it in the car. Yep. Right. Well, that's looking a lot more together. Got our water pump mounted. These mounting holes are through holes, which means the backside of all four of these mounting holes sees coolant. So I took my Ultra Blue in the RTVs and gooped up those bolts and the holes really well, because they are not only going to have to hold the torque and keep the water pump in place, they're going to have to seal the water pump inside the block. So yeah, keep that in mind if you're working on the exact same thing. And I swapped out this heater hose and this one up here. That guy is like the return hose, it looks like, and it comes through the base of the carbonator and then back into the top of the intake manifold. But I swapped out both of those hoses with new hoses while we're in here. Looks like it'd be impossible to change this one without pulling the water pump off, so now's the time. Now that I've let my RTV set up, I also, on the new water pump gaskets, I just goobed up both sides of the gasket with the RTV, just cause I know that this like style design water pump guy usually has a tendency to leak if you don't get it just right. So anywho, looks like I can torque my bolts down now and move on to mounting some pulleys and things up and getting my bracketry in place for the power steering pump. Shiny brand new rebuild on the AC bracket. AC slash what you call it, ignition coil and power steering, everything mounts on it. While that's drying, moving forward with the new power steering pump installation, gotta remove on a couple thing or two. This little 3-jaw puller I bought years ago, this thing is so handy. I've used it in the 2-jaw close-up format on the little bit ends to reach on the inside of the crank pulley. Yeah, the one that's under the tarp down there, to reach on the inside of that crank pulley. And now I've got it back over in the 3-jaw reach around the outside up close formation. And it's just really handy being able to change the arms and things around and pull everything off with it. So far, I've had a puller on hand for every pulley that's had to be pulled. Anyway, need to get my pulley off, swap that over to the new guy. This line right here, she ties back down over yonder. That needs to swap over. Looks like I've got a whole plethora of new seals and O-rings and things to go with all these. And over here, there's this big, whatever that guy is, that big fitting doodad thing with a giant bolt. It swaps over to here. So that should be interesting. And then after all that stuff's out of the way, we can get the last mounting mount bracket off, clean it up and paint it up like the other ones hanging up over there. You might be able to see everything's black in that direction. Alright. Now I've got all my important bits removed. This one guy on top with this big old gigantic bolt, man, that was a pain. But I figured out I could hold on to one side of the pump with my big plier guys and then get my 1 1/8" socket on a long 1/2-inch breaker bar. And then she came loose. Now over here on our new pump, I've got my new O-rings set in place, all soaked up with the transmission fluid, because she doesn't use power steering fluid in this application. And then we can take our reuse our, whatever this thing is called, transfer pipe, and bolt that back into place down to spec, which I'm sure is super duper crazy tight. Then I think I've got another new O-ring to soak up with the trans fluid there, mount that line back on, and then this thing only needs the mounting brackets to dry up, and then we can press the pulley back on. Before you know it, we'll be all refurbished and put back together, and everything from the timing chain forward is like brand new and in good shape and shiny again. Speaking of shiny, look at my bits. They got the clear coat. Alright, more shiny black painted parts. Now I've got my power steering pump all mounted back in place with all its fittings and bits mounted back to it. It's a return line. I guess that's the feed. Yeah, that'll be like the fluid in return line. And then the pressure side outline is all hooked back up with the new O-rings and whatnot. Now, before I can tighten down my mounting bolts, we get to move down here, put the shiny whatever that guy is. The dampener's already on there, so this is just like a giant pulley adapter that goes over the dampener. But we'll put that guy back in place, tighten his bolts all down, and then we might be able to put a few more pulleys on and get ready for some belts after an alternator. Still need to charge the battery that's not here. Well, boys, we're pulling all the wheels off. Fellers, let me tell you, this is a strange new experience for me here. It's a rather sad one. Also, these are like spanking new Pirellis on the old Thunderbird here. And I just did some digging because I have to know about these things. She's got a 3-digit date code on her, which means they're old. I know 3-digit date code means it's pre-2000, but I didn't really know how to decode one. So I looked up on it. What was this one? Like, this one's right here. The date code is 438. That means them tires was born in the 43rd week of a date ending in the year 8. And based on them having the modern sizing, P225/75 R15, I think they are either not 70s. I believe it's different lettering in the 70s for the sizing, but I think that makes them either tires from 88 or 98. Either way, it's 2022 right now. And my buddy's having me take all his wheels to him, and he's going to go get some fresh new rubber again mounted on them. Not again like he did it the first time, but again like, second time the car has had brand new tires put on it. But yeah, I'm thinking if that's 98, that means this is like almost 30 years ago. 98, 88. They are like 25 to 35-year-old tires. But ain't it just, I have never seen in my life of me always driving my tires until you don't have any tires anymore before I get new tires. I have just never seen brand new tires sit for 30 years. Anyway, now we'll get new ones. All right. Now that we've got all our belt sizes situated, still need to throw a tensioner in there, and everyone's loose. Anyway, moving on to putting in the freeze plug, because I got the right size one now. So we're going to take our little whirly pokey bit and just go around the inside of that freeze plug hole where the sides of the plug meet the block. That way we have a nice smooth contact surface and not any little bits of rust in there that are going to make us have leaks immediately after we put in our new plug. Okay. You might be able to, yep, there you go. Now I've got that freeze plug pressed in all the way around. Alright. Got one of my last bits over there drying from the cleany sandy brake clean sand again clean paint. And so that thing hanging over there is the tensioner for the water pump and AC compressor. But what I got going on right here quick, I managed to find a fitting real similar to the last one that we had in the old water pump, because the new water pump doesn't come with one. And you can tell by the state of the last one that was definitely something that needed to happen really soon, or it was going to make you do it later. So I'm going to get that all threaded into place. Then I can tighten up on my alternator and my power steering while the paint dries for the tensioner on the air conditioner. And after all that, I can mount my fan back up and maybe even put our new thermostat in the water tank guy in right there. Yeah. Okay. 2 out of our 3 belts is tight. Almost got my clear coat dry on the tensioner guy. Got some trans fluid in my power steering pump. And next, you can kind of see, this is Bagel. Hi, Bagel. Yeah, but you can kind of see what the state of the inside of the wheel wells is. Kind of, a little bit. You can really tell down there's all that pink paint transferred over. Over here, since we've got everything power washed and cleaned really well underneath and on the inside, we're getting started on our undercoating. Yeah. So that looks different. Much more betters. Get you down there. Yep. All over here. And on the inside of the bumper. Everywhere up in here. Bottom of the battery tray. Oop, maybe. Can you? Yep, there it is. Bottom of the battery tray, all up in these crevasses where the dirt and the road grime get thrown everywhere. We're all undercoated. Yep. Okay now. Now we're moving forward. You just seen in the time lapse there, hopefully if I didn't lose the footage. Gotta replace on some of the old cameras. But we just did the tear down. Got my new wheel cylinder here. Got all the old stuff out. And we have soaked this thing down in the brake cleans and scrubbed on it. And got all the gunk and the mess off. So now we can go back with the new wheel cylinder. And over here, I've got all my hardware, what's getting reused, laid out on the bench, and we'll one by one clamp them in my new bench vise. I like that thing a lot. And clean them up really good with our wire wheel on the screw gun. So that's pretty sweet. Okay. Now we've got all our pieces cleaned up nice. Especially important here, the pokey stabby guys that go into the master cylinder, wheel cylinder. You really got to make sure that you smooth all these edges down here on the end, because you don't want to, poke a hole in your seal or have a sharp edge moving back and forth against your seal. So definitely sand on your tips there. And my little adjuster guy is all cleaned the threads and put anti-sneeze all inside there and under the cap. So it spins freely now. She was frozen before. Not as bad as the other side. The other side is frozen on both ends. Anyway, time to put all that back down there now. Well, my little time-lapsey camera's battery went dead. So you missed a lot of the spring fighting, but there she is. New wheel cylinder and all our pieces and parts back in. I done test fitted the drum, and it even slides right over and spins. Not quite freely, there's a touch of buddy and a little drag. But I think she looks pretty good, and I don't know. Oh my goodness, that's very heavy. I don't know if I showed on y'all before, but I turned the surface here recently. Starting to get a little surface rust onto it. But yeah, I turned that smooth a little while ago. And yeah, now both of the rear ends brakes are all done, put back together, new pieces, parts. We're gonna leave the fluid lines unconnected like they are here and over there. And then next, we'll move forward up front. I'll do the other side off camera, learn what I'm doing, and then I'll show you guys how to do the brakes on the driver's side. And after we get the front brakes all sorted, we'll swap on our master cylinder with all 4 of our brake fluid lines unhooked from the wheel cylinders. We'll bleed a bunch of fluid, flush the whole system out through the lines from the master cylinder down, and after we run a few reservoirs full of fluid out, we'll hook all our lines back up and get to bleeding. All right. Right, Muffin? Now we're moving forward on our brake job on the Thunderbird. Just got finished up on both sides of the back. And then I've come over here. Actually, what I did first is I came over to the passenger side like I did at the back, and I got all familiarized. And on this side, got the drum off, everything's all cleaned up, new wheel cylinder, everything's put back together, cleaned all the springs and what? Hi, Bagel. Yep, but anyway, this side's all done and cleaned up, and I got to learn how to take it all apart and go through it so I can show you on the other side. As it turns out, I've seen this style before on the Junkyard Digs channel, which is really nice because it's really foreign to me if I hadn't have seen that before, because it's way different than all the other drum brakes I've ever done. This is the first front drum brakes I've ever messed with, and I noticed immediately it doesn't have that bar that goes in between up there. There's an extra set of the springy dingies down here that hold it in place, and it just looks weird. But it's actually super neat and convenient, except for one part. When you're swapping the wheel cylinder, you can get to one bolt and pull the line off and whatever from the back side. Not that you have to pull the line off, but the other bolt that holds it in is like up against the steering knuckle arm. So you actually have to take the 4 nuts off of these guys, and that whole backing plate will come out. Definitely recommend taking everything apart, removing your springs and all that before pulling the backing plate off, because, you know, we're doing a brake job. But this is pretty neat. If you needed to like get to your ball joints or something like that, you could take your line loose from the hard line up there under the lower control arm. Well, I guess that's the upper, yeah, under the upper control arm. And when you take those 4 nuts loose, this whole assembly can come off and you can leave your brakes all assembled and whatnot. So that's pretty neat. Not that it matters right now because we're disassembling. But anyhow, let's get on with the step by each word. To start with, on this side, we're popping this cap off, and then we can take the nut loose, what holds our outer wheel bearing in place, and then this whole hub will just slide off. When we pop that dust cap off, it's a strange setup inside here. I'm used to cotter pins being in everything, but on here, see if she'll slide off for us. Yep, but on here, there's no cotter pin hole. The guide just goes around till you like where it is, and you push the tab down into that slot. I think I like cotter pins better, but you know, that's the style of her. Okay, so now we got the drum popped off, and this is what she looks like on the inside. A little dirty. Looks like our wheel bearings have had the heat into them a time or two. Spindle doesn't have a groove worn in it though, that's always nice. But yeah, see, it's time to clean some things up, and also, if you can't tell, you may not be able to because it's so dirty, but this is all relatively fresh as far as the mileage is concerned brake job. The drums, it's a little hard to tell because I haven't cleaned them up yet, but those things were freshly turned not too many miles ago, and these shoes have a lot of meat left in them, look about new. Same thing with the spring. Hello. Same thing with all our springs and hardware, and I imagine the wheel cylinder was too, but you know, again, like I said a ways back, it seems like all this work was done somewhere in the 20 to 30 year range based on our date codage on the tires. But yeah, that's just really crazy to me. All that stuff is like brand new 20 some odd years ago. And now it's time to clean it all up and tear it all out. Real quick before I tear it down, I just noticed something's wrong here, fellers. See the knot tautness in our cable? I don't remember what that cable's called, but this whole apparatus is all about every time she goes backwards and stops, this little guy goes up, kicks a tooth, and turns that wheel well, you know, when the wheel can turn. That wheel's froze. Anyway, she turns that wheel slightly, and that very slowly spaces the bottom of the shoes out, so they're self-adjusting throughout the life. That way, as the pad lining wears, it keeps getting closer to the surface of the drum. But, yeah, all this is loose, and that's not good. And the first thought that I had is I read somewhere about if you get the wrong brake kit for these cars, that cable's too long. But that's all right. Oh, crisis averted. I noticed here this spring isn't locked into that hole like she's supposed to be. When you take that loose, this thing will come here, twist around, and yeah, that part of the spring will be right there. And that's why it is the way that it is. Anyway, tear it down. Right. Now that she's all stripped down, the next thing we're doing here, maybe if I get out of the light, yeah, see back up in there? We just took that hard line loose from the little tabby guy that holds the end of our soft line in place. And now, if you may be able to see this tab here, you see that guy? You gotta grab that and wiggle it up and down and left and right, and it'll shoot out to the side, and then the soft line will be free. And in the next instant after that, we'll take these 4 nuts loose on those bolts, and then this whole apparatus, what's left of it'll, she'll be removed. All right, now I've got my 4 nuts loose. 3 of them you can get to with the wheel sitting, or the hub, knuckle, whatever, sitting like with if the wheel is pointing straight forward. But this one down here, you got to grab the guy and turn her to the full lock, and then you can get to that one pretty easy. That's the 4 nuts. These 2 bolts slide right out of the top. The other 2 seem to stay in there pretty good. You could probably knock them out if you need to. Don't think you'd really need to, but now that those are out, oops. You remember that clip I was talking about earlier? Hold on. Now that clip's out, hose can come loose, and hey, looky there, bear steering knuckle. And yeah. And now we can clean up the backside. We can get to those back 2 bolts easily, pop the old wheel cylinder with the old line still attached to it out, and let's get some black spray painted. She messy. Yeah. That took a couple minutes. All right, we've got all our hardwares cleaned up and nice, and the adjuster guy is all rebuilt on. Took it apart and cleaned it up really good like we did the other 3, and stuffed her full of the anti-seize. And check out our backing plate. That's big different from the nasty caked up mess that it was. Now that the backing plate's clean, painted, prepped, all our stuff is clean, the hardware's, it's about reassemblization time. On the last corner too, I mean, fellers. But first, it's time for a break. We gotta let the paint dry. Yep, love a good excuse. And now we got our backing plate all bolted back to the steering knuckle with the new wheel cylinder. Might be able to, maybe a little dark. Yeah. All right. That looks really nice. Now that's the last of our 4 corners all reassembled. Next I can go ahead, hook my brake line into its holder, but we're gonna leave the the hard line loose from it. And the next step is either gonna be, probably gonna do clean up the wheel bearings, re-grease them, and put the 2 front hub drums back on. Okay then, got our drums all cleaned up, the braking surface and our wheel bearings re-greasified, and that weird little castle nut with the thing that pokes down, I popped that in with a punch, because it seems like if you don't do that, that castle nut can just slide off. But when I tapped it down with a punch, it like stays on there secure. Like the cotter pin a lot better. Up here I've got all the dirt cleaned out of that control arm. I had power washed it before, but that dirt was mixed with grease, so she was bagel. So that dirt was really solid. I had to scrape it out with the screwdriver and the vacuum cleaner. But anyway, I got all our grease points re-greased on the both sides of the front end. Hello. So anyhow, next it's time to pop the master cylinder off, which is good because there's plenty of room to do things around that. Okay, working on removing our master cylinder here. Soaked everybody with PB Blaster. The 3 brake lines we have here, which is front right, front left, and then the rears, all 3 of them were pre-stripped for us, which is, to be expected. She's like 60 some odd years old. But I've got 2 of the 3 broke loose so far, so that's a good sign. This block here that separates to the 3 lines, it spins into the master cylinder, so it's a 2 vice grip application over here, fellers. Hold the block in place with the one and clamp the other vice grip on the nut, and so far it's she's coming out not too bad. This is like the worst part of the whole master cylinder operation. All right, I got my 3 lines loose, and the I guess you could call that a metering block. I'm not sure if it actually meters or if it just splits up in an even 3-way direction, but I would reckon with there being straight fluid pressure here and to the other front wheel independently, and then the rears are both split off of one line, it seems like that might make it where there's more pressure up front than in the back, like modern cars are. Or I might be wrong there, and this thing might be an even 25% breakage all 4 corners. Really not too sure on that. Anyhow, she's apart, the lines are loose. Took the nuts off of the mount. I guess that might be a spacer between it back there. Yeah, that looks fine. Put it back, no problem. Yeah, but now we got that off, I can pop that spacer out of the way. I guess that's what that is. I've never seen a doohickey spacer washer thing behind a master cylinder. And we'll clean up the face of the brake booster real nice. And it looks like we only need to swap that little sensor there that probably doesn't work anymore onto the new unit. Oh well, at least it's not hard to get to if I need to pop a new one in there after she's all installated. Alright, I got all my valuable bits and pieces off of the old master cylinder. New guy's mounted up with some fluid in it. And I cleaned up on our little sensor guy and this brass T three-way type of situation. Ooh, look, the air's coming out. But look at the brass thing. It cleaned up really nice. I took some sandpaper to it and it just looks like a brand new thing now mostly. But we got our lines hooked back up, fluids in the gas. Putting a pause on the brakes for a moment. Got all my lines hooked up and all my drums on, ready for the bleeding. But the old lady's not quite back yet, so I ain't got nobody to run the brake pedal for me. So I started getting back into under the hood, popped the battery in, went to go ahead and do my first start with the new timing chain and all, and it didn't fire right off because the distributor had to be moved a little bit, I believe. I went that way. I believe I retarded the timing a little bit, and then it lit right off. See, I'm pretty sure with the slop in the timing chain, they had to advance or overtime. Advance, retard, I may be backward on those. But one way or another, the chain got slack, and then their timing was off, so they probably adjusted on it way back in the day, so I had to move it back. And she fires right up and runs now, but I had a little valve train clatter, so I pulled this valve cover off. We'll be doing the other side too now. It looks like all my valves are returning all the way, and and it looks like everybody's like moving freely despite how not very good it looks in there. It's a little on the dirty side. Yeah. But you see that oil drain back hole back there right next to that valve spring? That was completely full of sludge and clogged, so I got that cleaned out. It flows now. This drain back hole was draining, but it was almost all the way clogged up. So I got those cleaned out, and I dumped a bunch of Marvel's mystery oil to our whole operation up here. So hopefully that'll all be all right, but everything's moving pretty good, except right here I have one rocker arm, what makes the movement. So all my lifters on this side seem to be pumped up and holding pressure well, except that one we may have a little bit of a collapsy lifter issue. Might get better as it runs a little more, because this is the first time that it ran in a couple months now. But yeah, I think I've got everything lubricated pretty good. We're gonna put some more mystery oil in the oil, run it a good bit, make sure our oil pressure stays up, because we really got to watch out for all this sludge breaking loose, going down and clogging our pickup screen, and then killing our oil pressure. So gonna need to keep an eye on that gauge, but we're gonna go through a few heat cycles with a bunch of the mystery oil in it and change the oil a time or two, see if we can't get some of those sludgies to come out. And we definitely need to go do the same thing on the other side, because it's oil drain backs are clogged just the same. But yeah, it does run anyway. Okay, well, I was just about to fire it up again on the camera so y'all could hear, because she fires right up. Sounds pretty good at the back end. I mean, like the exhaust notes much louder, much clearer. You can really tell that the timing chain made a big difference and things are in time a lot better, because it just sounds a lot more responsive and powerful. However, I also noticed that I just had it running after I put that valve cover back on after clearing some sludge, and I noticed that with it sounds great at the back, but it's still a little bit shaky. And then I came up here to the front and I was like, well, I'm going to pull this valve cover off to clear the sludge out of the drain holes over there as well. I might as well go ahead and pull it off before I start it again. because it was making a valve train racket. It wasn't real loud, but it sounded like the push rods weren't keeping up, like the lifters weren't keeping up with the springs and things were clattering. But fellers, look what I found when I pulled the valve cover off of this side. Keep in mind now, we just looked at the other side and everything's in line. All my push rods are straight. I think I may have found out why it stumbles. It still stumbles now, by the way, but it sounds a lot stronger and healthier. It just still has a stumble. We're there's supposed to be a link between here and down there. But yeah, this side is way different than the other side. This push rod is bent. If I can get this guy. Oh hey, that one's good. See? She's nice. This one's not so nice. It's like hung up. It's bent so far that it's hitting on the side. I made it spin earlier, but yeah, now she's stuck. What about this one? Oh, can you? Hey, that one's good. That one's good. That's not good. See, that's what we don't want. So that's not good. This one's straight. Hey. And this one might just be holding the in-between, you know what I mean, putting pressure on the spring right now so I can't spin it. And I'm all up in the way, but yeah, that one's good. I'll have to rotate the motor a little and see about this one. It may be bent or it may just have tension on it. It looks straight though. So what is that? 1, possibly 2, 3. Nope. 4. Nope. 5. Hey. And 1, 2, 3. What is that? 1, 2. So that's 3 of them. Yeah. You know, 8 minus 5 would make 3. But yeah. This guy actually is down here. He's fell over to the side. So I guess from here I'm going to try to fish that out. Okay. So I went ahead and popped the other valve cover back off because I started getting real concerned, like maybe I had the ignition timing, let's say, advanced too far, causing the explosions to happen before the valves were closed, and I was wondering if maybe like I did something to cause the push rods to bend over there. However, I've ran it 2-3 times off of the camera, not since the last shot, but before then, after I'd been under this valve cover, and I just pulled it off, and everybody seems to be straight over here, except this one I'm not too sure about, because she's not turning, but all across the board, all the rest of them spin freely and look straight, so I don't think we have a timing problem, and I just bent a few push rods. I think this is pre-existing, and we've been down a hole this entire time we've been working on the old rig. So that's good, because I was worried like we're gonna put a set of push rods in it and bend one again. You know, that have you concerned. But it looks like I am clear to go ahead and pull this rotating assembly, what holds all the rocker arms, off, and we'll go ahead and do that on both sides and just clean it real good outside the rig. And then I can get a straight push rod out, measure on it, and make sure we're ordering the right length of guide. Okay, it's kind of neat the way this valve train system goes together. But got those 4 bolts pulled. It's taken out. The whole rocker roller assembly is on the bench here. And yeah, these things, they move, but not the best. So we'll definitely be deep cleaning on this and the one on the other side. Here's a straight push rod that I pulled out. Okay, I got one more piece out of there. There's a oil drainage tray that sits right underneath that valve train roller rocker thing, and I got that outside soaking in the degreaser. But have a look. So far it looks like it's only 3 out of my 16 push rods down there. See, there's a straight one, and if you look closely you can tell that those 3 got bent on. I have a crazy idea. We're replacing every bent push rod, either that or putting a whole new set in, one or the other. But while those are on order, I thought it might be a nifty idea to clean everything up as best as we can. Maybe try to straighten these push rods and put them back in, not to like drive around on, but just to run it long enough to verify that it's not backfiring, things aren't wrong in the timing department, and she's not about to rebend the new push rods. Okay, well, using my my new bench vise and my shop press over there, I've got our 3 bent push rods almost straight. They still have a little kinkage to them, but I think they're going to be straight enough for us to verify that we don't have some kind of crazy ignition problem and it's bending our push rods. But I definitely wouldn't leave these guys in there. This is just for testing purposes only. Try to save on bending a new push rod. Couple rounds of the engine degreaser and the brake clean. I think this part might be called a windage tray. Not really sure, but I've got all the built up oil deposits and nasty gunk out of its crevices. Changed colors on us too. And over here on our rocker arm roller guy, I've got it all soaked down with the brake clean, wire brushed and scrubbed all over it to get everything off. And then on both of these parts, after I did that, I soaked them both down with the PB blaster. Mainly on this one because it needs the lubrication, get everything broke loose, and the other reason I did that is to prevent on the rusty fellers, because after hitting it with the brake clean, that metal is stripped clean and just ready to start rusting on you. But soaking it in the PB, that keeps her from rusting away while I'm getting everything reassembled, and before the next time the car runs and everything's covered in oil again. Also, while I was cleaning this out, I made extra sure to make sure all those holes you see there, that's where the push rods made up to the rocker arms, those need to be especially clean because the push rod sits in there, it sends oil up from the lifter to lubricate up top, and it spins. So if we have any crunchy build-up nastiness in there, it's gonna wear out the end of the push rod and the inside of that cup. Okay, now I've got it torn down on both sides. My other bits and assemblies are all over there. I got them cleaned up, and I discovered I had one more bent push rod on this side, so we're up to a total of 4 bent push rods. And it does look like it was originally that way. I don't believe we have any sort of timing issues on account of I figured out everywhere where we have a bent push rod, we also have a stuck valve, which isn't in the least bit surprising when you look at the way that they are. So I've done got in here and started scraping around with a screwdriver and sucking a bunch of the loose oily bits out with the vacuum cleaner. And then I've soaked every valve down with the PB blaster, and we're gonna start slowly working with a piece of brass and a hammer to avoid like mushrooming those valve stem tips with the hammer. And we're gonna start slowly working, tapping them down, and then slowly coming back up and getting all those, whatever we are, up to 4 sticky stuck valves, get those all broke loose and worked free. That's what we're looking for. Oop, not quite, but you know, she's coming around. When you can hit it and it does like these. See how you have very consistent, equal rebound? As soon as the 2 stuck ones are like that, then we can lube them up one more time, tap them a couple more times again, and reassemble. Now if we could just get that one to be there, then we'll be somewhere. I realized that these push rods, see, these are my bent ones. They're less bent now. Nope, keep those separate. But I realized that these guys are solid, and this thing doesn't do the oil lubrications like I initially thought it did. In my 302s, the push rods are hollow and the oil gets pumped up through them via the lifter. But here, I can see on these pedestals where we mount the roller rocker situation, there's a hole right here. So that's an oil feed hole, which means our oil gets fed up in through the inside of here, and she spreads out of it. I'd imagine there must be oil holes in the middle of it, and then she pops out and pops out, pops out, pops out, pops out. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Doesn't work the way I thought it did. Okay. Well, we are down to one last stuck valve, which makes sense. Our valve situation, we had 4 stuck valves, and I believe in the operations of everything opening and closing, we're gonna have 4 open valves all the time whenever the engine's sitting still, so that makes sense that those would be the 4 that got stuck. Anyway, the other 3 are already broke loose and ringing nice, not like hanging up any at all. But that last one though, the first 3 were sticking and causing the push rod to bend because the valve wouldn't open fast enough. That last one wasn't sticking, it was stuck. Is stuck. Well, right now it's sticking, but it was stuck because I put a really big dent in the piece of wood I was using, and I had to hit that one pretty hard to get it to finally move. And then it's like gone down, come up a little, gone down again, and hasn't really moved a whole lot since, so I'm going to work on that one quite a bit more. But anyway, that about wraps up our 3rd volume of the Ford Thunder Chicken Revivalations. Bagel. Yep, that's you. You're Bagel. But that about wraps up our part 3. This was probably getting to be 30-40 minutes long by now. And in our part 4 episode, I'll bring y'all back in here after we've got that last valve thoroughly unstuckified, and we'll be reassembling with all the old bent push rods to verify that we ain't got no more sticky valves coming up. We'll run it for a while, do a couple heat cycles on those old guys, and make sure we ain't got no more valves about to be sticking again. And then, yeah, we'll move forward from there with our new push rods and new valve cover gaskets and put it all back together. And then we'll do another oil change because all the sludge that I just got into everything. And when we go to do the other oil change, we're going to pull the pan off and remove all the wonderful goodies that we know are in the bottom of that. Verify that our pickup screen is clear. We know it's not. There's no way. Look at the inside of this engine, fellers. That pan, she got to come off. But anyway, that's in the next one. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day. Comment, like, subscribe. Woohoo! Part 4. Bagel.
Yeah.